So what we'll do is allow a 7-minute. We were looking a little bit longer, but that wouldn't have allowed very much time for any kind of question and answering. So what we'll do now is we will bring forward Dr. Bratt to rebut for 7 minutes. And if you can't hear him, raise your hands at the back as you did before, and I'll put on the lapel mic. Thank you.
All right, flash response isn't necessarily directed at Dr. Collicott and myself, although we've never debated in person. The arguments that we've heard back and forth in the debates that we've had separately, I think are pretty much the same. But I think it's useful for the audience. And I just want to make a couple brief comments and just get the focus on the question and answer period. I began my talk by talking about some of the things that Dr. Collicott and myself agree on. During her presentation, I would add another one. We both believe that climate change is a real significant problem. Where we differ is on the solution. Dr. Collicott wrote a book called Nuclear Power is Not the Answer. I'm not suggesting that nuclear power is the answer. I think nuclear power can contribute, just as we need efficiencies, as we need to put prices on carbon and other things to climate change. Discussion of earthquakes came up. This is in fact sheet 9 of the Canadian Nuclear Society back there. There have been earthquakes on nuclear reactors. Point Lepreau suffered one. There was one in Japan. That would come out in the environmental assessment process. Okay. So there's opportunity, if Bruce Power goes forward in the Peace region, to raise earthquake issues at that time. But that is part of what they're designed for. That's why there's a significant assessment. That's one of the reasons it takes so long to build these things, is the degree of regulation and environmental assessment. And I support that. I think there are ways of streamlining it, but in general, I think we need a rigorous regulation system. I just wish we did it more to the oil and gas sector. Chernobyl. Dr. Collicott discussed, as I did myself, some of the problems, the deaths and the radiation attributed to Chernobyl. Went much further than I would have. But again, I want to stress how different and anomalous that is to the reactors that we're looking at in Alberta, Canada, and the West. You know, the lack of a containment facility, the lack of the real oversight that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission has. Right? This could not happen in Canada. A Chernobyl-type reactor isn't licensed anywhere else, and that could not happen here. There's built-in redundancies. You may recall some of the issues at the Chalk River facility. Okay? And back in December of 2007, it was shut down. There was a bit of a nasty snit between the regulatory agency and Atomic Energy, and it led to a parliamentary reopening. That was about a backup safety system having 1 or 2 pumps connected. Not the safety system, but a backup safety system with 1 versus 2. That shows you the degree of regulation that we have. Concrete and cement, and how much those emit per reactor. Well, what about windmills? And you say, well, a windmill isn't as big as a nuclear reactor. Well, how many windmills do you need to produce 700 megawatts of power or 1,000 megawatts of power? There's a lot of concrete and cement in windmills. And that's why when we look at life cycle greenhouse gas emissions, they're comparable. Refurbishment, we've seen issues with wind turbines after 15 years as well. Things break down, they need to be replaced. There is no magic electricity answer. If there was, we wouldn't be here. Okay? There is no silver bullet. You're looking at the best possible answer. And most of her talk dealt with radiation and the health effects of radiation. And there was just a couple quotes that came out happening. One is no safe radiation. And so the question would then be, what about natural rates of radiation that are already out there? Another quote came from that the medical industry is the biggest already, not the nuclear industry, the medical industry. Well, if you're going to shut down the nuclear industry, does that mean if medical is worse, we should be shutting down the medical industry? No. The German leukemia study. This is brought out all the time. Well, the German Commission on Radiological Protection okay, assessed that German childhood leukemia study and ruled out radiation exposures from nuclear power plants as a cause for that cluster. Other studies in Britain and France, using the same methodology as the German study, couldn't find an increase in their population. We simply don't know the answer that this study came up with. The Hershey chocolates. I don't even like Hershey chocolates, so I'm a potato chip guy. But my wife eats it. And in fact, if you were to listen about all of the cancers that are coming out, life expectancies are increasing across the world, despite decades of nuclear power. There have been studies of probably the most vulnerable group. Again, the workers in the nuclear power plants have been often studied. They haven't seen an increase. And I think the message to come out is that no cancer carries an ID. And Dr. Kelcott said that several times, yet linked it all to nuclear power. 1 minute? I'll pass on my 1 minute.